Hello, everyone. My reflection project is about the ethics of friendship, specifically focusing on duties and moral dilemmas. So, all my thoughts can be traced back to my own story. One day, while I was revising for a really important final exam, which would be taking place the next day, my friend called me and told me that she had encountered something unpleasant, and she was on the verge of mental breakdown. This presented me a dilemma. Possibly I could choose friendship and spend time chatting with her, yet at the expense of losing my precious time for the last minute revision. Alternatively, I could hang up the phone and continue my revision, which means I have to temporarily ignore her feeling and become an irresponsible friend. This difficult situation caused me to question what duties are involved in friendship, what to do if there is a conflict between different duties, and what to do if there is a trade off between friendship and individual welfare or happiness. These intractable questions are exactly what initiated me to do this moral reflection project. My project is divided into three parts. To start off, I will briefly discuss the nature of friendship. The central focus would be the duties and dilemmas involved in friendship, which includes the reference to ethical pluralism and other moral theories. Finally, I will conclude with my personal reflection and the lessons learned. To start off, let's begin with defining friendship. There are three key components of friendship. Friends must care and love the other, which usually involves sympathy and actions on the friend's behalf. Comparing to other interpersonal relationships, friendships are deeper and more intimate. Also, friends should spend time together and interact with each other. For instance, talking to each other or watching movies together. It is also noteworthy that although the concept of friendship is often tied up with love, there are still differences between them. Love is an evaluative attitude directed at particular persons, which works in one-way direction. Friendship, by contrast, is essentially a kind of relationship grounded in the special concern each has for the other. In other words, it requires a two-way commitment. I think this bidirectional structure is what distinguishes the ethics of friendship from other practical moral issues. Aristotle has distinguished three kinds of friendship: friendships of pleasure, of utility, and of virtue. That is to say, I may love my friend because of the pleasure I get out of her, or because of the ways in which she is useful to me, or because I find her to have a virtuous character. Most contemporary accounts ignore pleasure and utility friendships and draw attention to friendship of virtue because it is considered to be genuine and non-deficient mode of friendship, given that it is motivated by the excellences of your friend's character. Then let's move on to the central discussion. The key ethical question here is that friendship usually involves special duties. In other words, we feel the obligations to help and support our friends that go well beyond those we have to help strangers because they are our friends. Recalling back my personal story, there is a conflict between my duty to help my friend and my personal welfare and self-development. You might think this is trivial, yet it can be more serious when such special duties of friendship conflict with moral, social, or legal duties. For instance, if your friend committed a crime, would you lie to the police in order to save your friend? This all leads us to question that can we sometimes prioritize our obligations to our friends over our moral duties, or must we always subordinate our personal relationships to morality in order to be properly impartial? Arguably, the most relevant moral theories can be ethical pluralism, argued by Rawls. Rawls identifies seven prima facie duties, each of which is meant to represent a distinct basis of our moral requirements. And to note, this list is not exhaustive. The term prima facie duty can be misleading. That's because they are not referring to absolute obligations, but rather strong moral reasons that partly determine whether an action is morally required. In other words, this theory is quite contextual dependent. For Rawls, there are circumstances in which it is morally acceptable to break a promise and to tell a lie, for instance. Duties and obligations are not so rigid and absolute as presented in Kantian ethics in comparison. Usually in everyday life, prima facie duty can compete with each other. For instance, in my story, there is a clash between the prima facie duty of self-development, making myself more intelligent or virtuous, and the prima facie duty of beneficence, enhancing the intelligence, virtue, or pleasure of my friend. Indeed, Rawls' proposal for prima facie duty is based on his denial of moral absolutism, the idea that there is just a single absolute moral law, as presented by Kantian ethics and utilitarianism, for instance. In line with Rawls' argument, there are great limitations of absolutist approaches when it comes to friendship. Suppose you embody the utilitarian reason as your motive in your action and thoughts towards someone. Whatever your relation to that person, it is necessarily not love nor friendship, because by definition, friendship requires you acting on the behalf of the other person, not for the sake of maximizing the total utility. There is also inconsistency in egoism. Love and friendship are important sources of personal pleasure, but can such egoists get these pleasures? Nope. Not so long as they adhere to the motive of pleasure for self. Michelle Stalker has made the same point. Just as egoism and the above sorts of utilitarianisms necessitate a schizophrenia between reason and motive, so do current rule utilitarianisms, and so do current deontologies. What is lacking in these theories is simply the person. For love, friendship, affection, fellow feeling, and community, all require that the other person be an essential part of what is valued. So when dealing with interpersonal relationships, we cannot blindly follow the absolute moral principles. Instead, we also need to take into account of the special relationship we have with the other person. Building upon the analysis of different moral theories, I finally wish to offer my personal thoughts. In everyday life, depending on how you handle the situation, there might not be necessary conflict. Most moral theories seem to imply that we have to passively accept the given dilemma, and our choice necessarily involves a sacrifice. Yet, from my own observation, we can often actively change the given situation. There is more flexibility and dynamic in handling these issues. Linking back to my story, I can explain to my friend my exam pressure and promise to offer her help after I finish my exam. Possibly she will understand my difficulties and not blame me for this. This indeed reveals how the two-way interaction comes into play. Through communication, one often can find a middle ground that carefully combine the duties together. This also demonstrates the importance of communication and mutual understanding in friendship and other interpersonal relationships. At the end of the day, we still need to invest time and interact with our friends more. Those precious experiences be, help build up a solid foundation for friendship. Also, through those experiences, we gradually improve our communication skills and gain practical wisdom. Through those experiences, we learn how to overcome challenges and sustain our friendship over time. Thank you for your listening.